Okay, so the next part of intelligence is going to be about the dynamics of intelligence. And thanks to our cross-sectional studies and longitudinal studies on intelligence, they've been able to find out a couple things of intelligence. Okay, and there's also this whole thing about genetics and all that. We'll talk about that as well. So first thing about intelligence is that aging and intelligence. And what they have found through cross-sectional studies is that over time, as you age, your intelligence starts actually declining. Okay, no surprise there. And but there's actually two types of intelligence that one is going to decline and the other one is going to accumulate and increase. Okay, but for the most part, intelligence and especially the speed of processing starts declining as you start getting older. Okay, so that there is a big difference what they've noticed when it comes to age um, and intelligence. But one of the things, so don't be worried that in the 20s you're going to start declining. No, 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 not that fast. Okay, they actually start saying that at the age of 85, it actually starts declining significantly. Okay, but you do start slowly declining in your late 20s and 30s, up to like 75, and then after that it just starts declining a lot faster, right? So that's why people that are like in their 70s, you start seeing like from one year to the next a big change in their cognitive abilities. Okay, now there are two types of intelligence that they've discovered, and the first one is going to be what's called crystallized intelligence. Okay, and very important because they always ask this question. Okay, so crystallized intelligence, those are two L's there, by the way. And this is basically accumulated knowledge and verbal skills over time. Okay, so make sure that you know that, you've written that down. And this one increases as we get older, right? More experience, more knowledge. This is going to increase. So I always think and put this down to remember like a crystal. Crystals, they accumulate. So this is like crystallized, it accumulates our knowledge. And this over time is what gets increases, right? So crystallized, as you get older, you have higher crystallized intelligence. Now, the second one is going to be called fluid intelligence. And this one is your ability to reason quickly and abstractly. Okay, so make sure you have that down. And this one obviously starts declining as you get older. So it's really like in your late 20s and 30s, um, starts slowly declining, but not as, once you're like in your 60s, 70s, it starts declining a lot quicker. Okay. And that's basically it with those two types of things. Now, there is what's called the Flynn effect. And the Flynn effect is what they have found out is that the different generations, as the years progress and different generations arrive, the IQ actually has been increasing. So people from the 1950s, their IQ is going to be a lot lower than people from the 20, from this generation, right? The 21st generation. So it's interesting because people are like, oh, people are getting these like teenagers are getting, stupid or whatever with all this technology, when in reality they're actually showing that their IQ is a lot better than people that are older. But don't say that to anybody, okay? Or you could say that when they want to, insult you. Okay, teenagers, always protecting you guys. All right, the next one is what's called extremes of intelligence. And these are there when we are three standard deviations away, right? Well, two standard deviations away from the mean, right? It's kind of like your low average or above average. And then you get to the third one, which is your extremes, okay? So usually two standard deviations, you're in the either in the norm or below average or above average. But once you get to the third standard deviation, this is where we start with our extremes. Okay, so it could be three standard deviations away from the mean and 3 standard deviations above the mean. So we have what's called the high extremes, okay? So the high extremes are basically anything that is over 130, okay? So 130 IQ, um, or even 135, what some people would say. This is typically people that would be considered gifted. Okay, so writing this down. And this is, they tend to do better, higher levels of education. They tend to be a little bit more professionals. However, there's also a lot of research with um, people that are gifted that also are a lot more isolated and introverts. So there is a mix there. There's definitely, we will have conversations on this. I have a great article on high performing children, right? Gifted children, and how sometimes actually they won't perform as well because of this idea of like, oh, you're so smart. And then if they fail, like, is it a reflection of their intelligence? So it's really cool, interesting conversation, and definitely one we want to have in class. Um, but yes, so high extremes is your gifted child. IQ is typically over 130. And so they tend to do well in gifted programs that allow them to be creative. There's more academic challenges, a lot of more analytical, right? To me, AP classes are very much like a gifted class, or what it should be, in which they're just more of an analysis, questioning, kind of students taking the role. Okay. And that is for that one, for the highs. And then we have your low extremes. And this is when the IQ is below 70. Okay. So for that one is above, this one is below. And usually this is what would be called an intellectual disability. Okay. So an intellectual disability is that it takes them a little bit more, it's challenging to process, information, solve. Their speed of processing tends to be a little bit slower. However, that does not mean that they cannot learn, right? I've had plenty of students that were below IQs of 70, and they eventually they do learn, but just at a different time frame than other students. Okay, it's not a big deal. But I will tell you a story of this young student I had in elementary and what happens because people didn't believe in her because she had such a low IQ. And I was like, give her time, give her time. And sure enough, she eventually learned how to read and do math and did really well. But anyway, another thing that you need to know under intellectual disability, some some people that are born with Down syndrome, they usually, one of the things, and Down syndrome is basically that they have an extra chromosome, so it's typically associated with a physical disability, but as well as an intellectual. So usually people with Down syndrome, their IQ will be in below the third um, standard deviation. But again, that does not mean they cannot learn. They definitely can learn. It just takes them a little bit longer. Okay, and that's basically it for the extremes of intelligence. See, trying to do this quick. All right, I'm leaving. Bye.